Good afternoon. Welcome to the Midday Mull for Monday, the 30th of August. We continue reading through the first book of Samuel, and today we read chapter 23. David is on the run. Saul has tried to kill him, and David escaped. And as David moves around, a group of people gather around him. So he now has a band of about 600 men with him, and he's constantly on the wary of what Saul might plan. But David hears that the Philistines are attacking a certain town, a town of Keilah, and we're told in verse 2, David inquired of the Lord, saying, "Shall I go and attack these Philistines?" And the Lord said, "Yes, go and attack them and deliver Keilah." The men that are with him aren't so sure. So they say, "This sounds like a bad idea." So we're told in verse 4, once again, David inquired of the Lord, and the Lord answered him, "Go down to Keilah, for I'm going to give the Philistines into your hands." And David does what God tells him. He goes, and that happens. The town's delivered into his hands. The news gets back to Saul, who hears that David is at Keilah, and his response is, he says, "God has delivered him into my hands, for David has imprisoned himself in a town with gates and bars." And Saul called up all his forces for battle to go down to Keilah and besiege David. David then hears this news, and he calls the priest Abiathar and says, "Bring the ephod, I want to consult God." And again he asks, David says, "Lord God of Israel, your servant has heard definitely that Saul plans to come to Keilah and destroy the town on account of me. Will the citizens surrender me to him?" And he asks God, "Will this happen?" And God said, "Yes." And he asks, "What must I do?" And so what struck me was that David constantly is asking God, "What do I need to do?" Saul, on the other hand, hears the news, weighs up the evidence, makes his own schemes, whatever his criteria might be, and he then goes and acts. As a result, David is successful and Saul is not. And as I was thinking about this, I thought as Christians we need to be asking God's guidance time and time and time again. He's a loving Father, and he never gets tired of us asking things of him. Jesus encourages us and says, ask and keep on asking. He also says, don't stop praying. He encourages us to continue praying, to continue asking God. And as a parent likes it when their children come and ask advice, whether the children take it or not is a completely different question. But in the same way, God likes it when we come to ask advice from him, to seek his guidance, and we do well to follow it. And the other thing that just struck me was that David did this when he was in trouble. He was on the run. He wasn't sure. He was under threat. Life was not going well. He was not sitting in a comfortable palace. He was in a difficult place. And in that situation, he called on God and sought God's guidance. And my encouragement to everyone, whenever times become difficult and there's a struggle, to remember God is always there. And he can always guide us in the decisions we make. So remember that God is our loving Father. And whether we are in a good place, and particularly when we're struggling, we can go to him and say, "God, I need your help. Guide me in what I do." And God does that. Be encouraged, be strengthened, and be blessed.